hope everyone had a phenomenal week. TGIF, because we don't know how many more Fs we're really going to have. It seems like we're facing the end of the world for realsies this time. You see, NATO has given Ukraine, this country that we somehow keep propping up as if we lose it, it's the end of the world, but if we fight for it, it's also really the end of the world. We've given them these long-range missiles that can go from Ukraine to center parts of Russia, which is deemed crucial for their ongoing conflict. Now, Russia has said, if you use those, we're in an all-out war. And NATO says, okay, we're going to use them because we don't like you. Yeah, so now we're at a high risk of a nuclear war. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video, everybody. Before we get into it, I do want to encourage everyone to smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't yet already, because this may be your last chance to actually do those things. And for anyone that's seen movies like this, Don't Look Up, this was freaking horrifying. You had a president, a female president, Kamala Harris, foreshadowing, who ignored a bunch of signs. Now, this wasn't about nuclear war. It's about an asteroid coming into Earth, and they tried to, monetize it, and then it ended up blowing up everybody, and that was pretty much the end of the world, which they kept saying, don't look up, don't look up. But it just feels like there's parallels between this movie and what's happening now, and we're ignoring all the warning signs. You have Donald Trump, who's like the only person, the only politician who's actually running for presidency, but the only politician out there who's saying, no more war, it needs to stop, we're all gonna die. Even Elon Musk has said, we're all going to die, so I'm trying to get people to Mars. And then you have Democrats and liberals going, more war, let's give more to Ukraine and let's defeat Russia once and for all, ignoring all of the signs of a potential nuclear threat. So I just came across a video, actually, that I want to share with you guys. This is from Danny Haifong's YouTube channel, where he has Scott Ritter as a special guest. And this portion of the clip, it's right in the beginning stages of the video, is extremely, extremely alarming. Let's take a look at what they have to say.
Be approved. Scott, what is the risks here, though? What exactly will this portend should it be formally approved? If you could just talk about the significance of this.
The risks of thermonuclear war. I mean, this is literally lunacy, the definition of lunacy. I don't understand what the Biden administration's seeking to do. I mean, I know we have a policy of supporting Ukraine, et cetera, but is Ukraine worth America? I mean, are we saying that Ukraine is an existential extension of America? That if we lose Ukraine, we lose America? Therefore, we're willing to bet it all on this, vain hope that Ukraine can somehow stabilize this situation, right this ship, and move on to victory over Russia, understanding that Ukrainian victory over Russia means the end of the world. So either way we go, we appear to be saying that we're willing to put the lives of all Americans at risk for Ukraine, because that's the life.
It's not just the lives of all Americans, it's the lives of the entire world. Now, if you're wondering who that gentleman was, this is Scott Ritter. Scott Ritter. He was born in 1961. He's an American former United States Marine Corps intelligence officer, former United Nations Special Commission weapons inspector, author, and commentator. Now, upon finding out who he is, it does also say that he's a convicted sex offender. So do with that information as you will. Does his prior convictions have anything to do with, the severity of the situation? I will leave that up to you to make that distinction. But when we look at Kamala Harris, who is talking about the war in Russia, between Russia and Ukraine, this is what she recently said at a debate. And she is pro-war, by the way. This has been very apparent by the Democrat policies, how she's presented herself in this debate, and how Trump has really brought to light a lot of the flaws from the Democrats, from the Biden and Harris administration.
First of all, it's important to remind the former president, you're not running against Joe Biden, you're running against me. I believe the reason that Donald Trump says that this war would be over within 24 hours is because he would just give it up. And that's not who we are as Americans. Let's understand what happened here. I actually met with Zelensky a few days before Russia invaded, tried through force to change territorial boundaries, to defy one of the most important international rules and norms, which is the importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity. And I met with President Zelensky. I shared with him American intelligence about how he could defend himself. Days later, I went to NATO's eastern flank, to Poland and Romania. And through the work that I and others did, we brought 50 countries together to support Ukraine in its righteous defense. And because of our support, because of the air defense, the ammunition, the artillery, the javelins, the Abrams tanks that we have provided, Ukraine stands as an independent and free country. If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now. And understand what that would mean, because Putin's agenda is not just about Ukraine. Understand why the European allies and our NATO allies are so thankful that you are no longer president, and that we understand the importance of the greatest military alliance the world has ever known, which is NATO, and what we have done to preserve the ability of Zelensky and the Ukrainians to fight for their independence. Otherwise, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv with his eyes on the rest of Europe, starting with Poland. And why don't you tell the 800,000 Polish Americans right here in Pennsylvania how quickly you would give up for the sake of favor and what you think is a friendship with what is known to be a dictator who would eat you for lunch.
Okay, so from my understanding, there hasn't been any rhetoric from Russia that they're going to take over Poland to any capacity. Now, when Donald Trump was asked the question of who do you think is or who should win between Russia and Ukraine, again, Donald Trump emphasizes the fact that there are no winners. The only reasonable solution is to stop all wars because we are all going to die.
You want Ukraine to win this war?
I want the war to stop. I want to save lives that are being uselessly, people being killed by the millions. It's the millions. It's so much worse than the numbers that you're getting, which are fake numbers. Look, we're in for 250 billion or more because they don't ask Europe, which is a much bigger beneficiary to getting this thing done than we are. They're in for $150 billion less because Biden and you don't have the courage to ask Europe like I did with NATO. They paid billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars when I said, either you pay up or we're not going to protect you anymore. So that's maybe one of the reasons they don't like me as much as they like weak people. But you take a look at what's happening. We're in for 250 to 275 billion. They're into 100 to 150. They should be forced to equalize. With that being said, I want to get the war settled. I know Zelensky very well, and I know Putin very well. I have a good relationship, and they respect your president, okay? They respect me. They don't respect Biden. How would you respect him? Why? For what reason? He hasn't even made a phone call in 2 years to Putin, hasn't spoken to anybody. They don't even try and get it. That is a war that's dying to be settled. I will get it settled before I even become president. If I win, when I'm president-elect, and what I'll do is I'll speak to one, I'll speak to the other, I'll get them together. That war would have never happened. And in fact, when I saw Putin after I left, unfortunately left because our country has gone to hell. But after I left, when I saw him building up soldiers, he did it after I left. I said, oh, he must be negotiating. It must be a good, strong point of negotiation. Well, it wasn't, because Biden had no idea how to talk to him. He had no idea how to stop it. And now you have millions of people dead, and it's only getting worse, and it could lead to World War III. Don't kid yourself, David. We're playing with World War III, and we have a president that we don't even know if he's... Where is our president? We don't even know if he's a president.
And just to clarify
they threw him out of a campaign like a dog. We don't even know. Is he our president? But we have a president,
Mr. President,
that doesn't know he's alive.
Your time is up. Just to clarify in the question, do you believe it's in the U.S. best interest for Ukraine to win this war, yes or no?
I think it's the U.S. best interest to get this war finished and just get it done.
All right.
Negotiate a deal, because we have to stop all of these human lives from being...
And somehow that became extremely controversial within the left radical woke people that exist. Ending a war and calling for the end of all of these lives that are being lost and the potential escalation of nuclear war, just saying, hey, I don't want any of that. Somehow that's extremely controversial because you don't support Ukraine. America, Canada, NATO has supported Ukraine tirelessly. And now we're at the point where, hey, we might be in a full-blown war with Russia. Russia hasn't considered this a war yet. That's why they're using all of their old equipment. They haven't shown any of their modern, up-to-date stuff yet because they haven't actually classified this as a war. This is like shooing off mosquitoes for them. This is not something to take lightly. Now, why are we talking about this on a Canadian channel? Well, one, it's potentially the end of the world coming soon. But two, Justin Trudeau did just recently make a statement saying that, hey, we support this war and we should go after Russia even more so. I can't believe that he said that, but that is actually what he said. Trudeau says Ukraine can strike deep into Russia with NATO arms. Putin hints at war. Prime Minister Trudeau says Ukraine should be allowed to strike deep inside Russia using these long-range missiles. His comments come 5 weeks after Ukrainian forces stormed the border and put parts of Russian territory under foreign occupation for the first time since the Second World War. Trudeau says Canada fully supports Ukraine using long-range weaponry to prevent Russia's strikes on hospitals and daycares across the country. He says Ukraine must win in fighting back against Russia's invasion, or it will encourage other large countries to try absorbing their neighbors. That just seems like fear-mongering, but here's what Justin Trudeau officially said at a press conference earlier today.
Vladimir Putin says Russia will be at war with NATO if Ukraine uses long-range missiles deep into Russia. How far into Russia do you think Ukraine should be able to strike?
Vladimir Putin is striking regularly in the heart of Ukraine. He's sending missiles and bombs at hospitals, at daycare centers, at families and communities across Ukraine. And it was his choice to invade a neighboring sovereign nation. His choice to start this conflict, and it could be his choice to end it tomorrow. All he has to do is pull back his troops into Russian territory. But he won't do that. He is not just trying to remove any choice that Ukrainians have around where they want their future to go, remove their independence, remove their sovereignty. He's trying to deeply destabilize the international rules-based order that protects us all, not just in every democracy around the world, but in all countries around the world. Any country with a neighbor with a slightly larger army should be worried if it suddenly becomes allowed to invade and redraw lines on the map. And that's why Canada and others are unequivocal that Ukraine must win this war against Russia. And we will continue to be there to support Ukraine. And yes, Canada fully supports Ukraine using long-range weaponry to prevent and interdict Russia's continued ability to degrade Ukrainian civilian infrastructure and mostly to kill innocent civilians in their unjust war.
Yeah, he said Canadian support. That's not the case at all. Most Canadians do not support funding this level of war for Ukraine. Look, Ukraine isn't a part of NATO, and at what point is it worth cutting off your arm to save the rest of your body, right? I'm not saying that we just let Ukraine, go up in flames, but at the same time, what are the alternatives? I mean, it's going to escalate at some point to nuclear. If they get the approval to launch those missiles deep into Russia, Russia has already stated that, hey, then we're at war with all of NATO. And last time I checked, Canada is not that far from Russia. And it gets really scary when you have the actual official BRICS news account that tweets this photo or this part of Justin Trudeau's speech. Canada Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says he fully supports Ukraine using long-range missiles to strike inside of Russia. That is not good at all, considering when you look at our relationship with Russia. Canada is on Russia's unfriendly countries list. Countries and territories on the list have imposed or joined sanctions against Russia. So we're not very well positioned with Russia, and we are an enemy of the Russian state. So not very good. CNN is reporting that Russia will be at war with NATO if Ukraine long-range missile restrictions are lifted. So they actually have those missiles. These ones right here, the Storm Shadows, they are in the possession of Ukraine. They just don't have the approval from NATO, or more importantly, from the United States. Let's be real here, to launch them. So what is the Storm Shadow, these long-range missiles that is potentially going to be the make or break of World War III? Storm Shadow is an Anglo-French cruise missile with a maximum range of around 250 kilometers, 155 miles. Britain and France have already sent these missiles to Ukraine, but with the caveat that Kiev can only fire them at targets inside its own borders. They don't yet have permission to launch them into Russia. Why does Ukraine want it now? Ukraine's cities and front lines are under daily bombardment from Russia. Many of the missiles and glide bombs that wreak devastation on military positions. Blocks of flats and hospitals are launched by Russian aircrafts far within Russia itself. And then when you look at the map of Ukraine that borders Russia, you can see that there's an air base within 155 miles, 250 kilometers, which is the exact amount of distance for them to launch it from either Sumy or Kiev into that airbase. Let's take a look at the breakdown or the explanation of what exactly these missiles are.
France. They're a long-range missile designed to hit static targets that are very deeply fortified and high-value targets. They have to be high-value because the Storm Shadow is quite an expensive bit of kit. It does go 300 kilometers, but it costs about £2 million a copy. But it's got a special warhead in it, a double warhead. The first warhead breaks open the target, and the second warhead goes through the gap to blow up the target. And that means it can go through between 2 and 4 meters of concrete. It's also very capable of flying at very low level using terrain masking and a whole host of electronic warfare capabilities, most of which we can't talk about publicly. Unfortunately, it's also very heavy, weighs about 1,300 kilograms. That's more than a weight of a small car, and therefore there are only certain aircraft that can carry that sort of weight and deliver it to a target. But it will provide a game-changing capability for the Ukrainian military. President Zelensky has been really clear that he needs the West's weapons. He needs short-range weapons to equip their troops on the front line, but he also needs to target Russian logistics and ammunition stores, which are often quite some way behind the front line. Now, confidence from the West about whether these weapons could be used to target within Russian soil has limited the West's appetite to provide longer-range weapons. But as the West has got more and more confident in Ukraine's ability to use the weapons as they are requested by the West, so they've started to go to artillery, which goes 20 miles. America's provided high miles at 50 miles. And now it looks like the West, particularly around the UK, is prepared to go out to 300 kilometers. And that's a significant difference and a significant risk for the UK taking that big decision on behalf of the West.
Yikes. And so Russia's response is if we do give them approval to actually use them, then we could just see a full-fledged war from Russia and all of BRICS, all of their allies. So then you look at questions like this that get asked on Quora. Are Storm Shadow missiles capable of carrying nuclear warheads? And the top answer here is they are not designed to. They carry designed high explosive penetration charge, but they certainly have the capability to do so. Their existing warheads weigh 450 kilograms. There are existing nuclear warheads that weigh a lot less. So with some engineering and packaging, there's your nuclear Storm Shadow. And so these can actually theoretically be converted into nuclear warheads, long-range nuclear warheads that are shot from different aircrafts. And then we also do have some kind of everyone's on edge because Russia is holding a BRICS summit here within the next 30 days, I believe, and you have Xi Jinping, leader of China, who is going to be attending that. And I think that NATO wants to make a move before this summit happens. So hopefully we make it to Christmas, but we might not actually make it to Christmas. And also, what's before that? Oh, yeah, the next scheduled American election. Interesting.
Chinese leader Xi Jinping will visit Russia next month for the second time since Russia sent troops into Ukraine. China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi confirmed the meeting will happen during a summit of the BRICS bloc of developing economies.
И Китай сообща отстаивают принципы справедливого, демократического миропорядка, основанного на международном праве, суверенитете, равенстве. Такой же подход поддерживают и единомышленники из числа стран глобального юга, мирового большинства, в чем можно было бы очередной раз убедиться на саммите БРИКС.
So is NATO going to purposely allow Ukraine to launch these missiles, give them the approval before the election for maybe some political gain, maybe to pull on the strings of Americans, say, hey, look, we're actually in a war now that's been declared by Russia, that we are in a war officially, without a doubt. And so choose wisely when you vote. Is that something that they could do? Absolutely. Would they do that? I think a lot of people would say, yeah, there's no doubt about it. But we're, again, going to have to wait and see just how this unravels. But I did find this post here from the Washington Post that Zelensky said he would reveal the plan first to Biden and then the presidential candidates, because Zelensky is coming to Washington, D.C. And so he's going to be meeting with all three presidents or presidential candidates, right? He's going to be meeting with Biden. He's going to be meeting with Kamala Harris. And then he's also going to be meeting with former President Donald Trump, as well as Congress. However, he's declined to give details, which he said would consist only of a few points. All the points depend on the decision of Biden. So we're going to know in the coming week, I believe, what this is going to look like. And in terms of Justin Trudeau and what he said about Putin and how he's, ready for Ukraine to take the risk to shoot those missiles, which would then ipso de facto make NATO, Canada, a very bad enemy of Russia. And we're not that far from Russia. We kind of border them with a little bit of space between us. They're not too far away from us, a lot closer than people seem to anticipate. It's not the first time Justin Trudeau's taken aim at Putin. You have this clip here from earlier this year where Trudeau says some naughty things about Putin.
We know and we've seen repeatedly the extent to which any opposition in Russia is either marginalized or, quite frankly, executed. What happened to Alexei Navalny demonstrates that for all that Putin pretends to be strong, he's actually a coward. To execute one's political opponents, to quash dissent by using police and military, to make sure there is no opposition, is the mark of a weakling, not a mark of someone who is confident in his own position.
So Justin Trudeau calls Putin a weakling when you would have an entire country agree that Justin Trudeau is the weakling. And then you have this breaking news here that the U.S. has imposed new sanctions on Russia over attempts to subvert and polarize free and open societies. Today, we're imposing sanctions on 3 entities and 2 individuals for Russia's covert global influence operations, including interference in Moldova's democracy and its upcoming elections. And this is their response to apparently Russia's weaponization of disinformation to subvert and polarize free and open societies that extends to every part of the world. Because if you are against Ukraine to any extent, or against funding of Ukraine to any extent, you have been groomed and indoctrinated by Russia, by Putin's mis and disinformation. Because you don't want the escalation of war, because you should be pro-war, you are somehow subject to disinformation and not your own critical thinking, but you've been brainwashed by Putin, and so they need to take immediate action. None of this makes any sense at all. Why? I'm not suggesting by any means that we just let Ukraine blow up or let all of the civilians die. That would be absolutely insane. But we need to, as a community, as NATO, there needs to be some more critical thinking that goes into this. Why are we spending so much money? Why are we deciding, like Ukraine, that what the hell is so important about Ukraine? Why are we spending so much resources and potentially putting the entire world at risk of World War III, of nuclear war over Ukraine that isn't even a part of NATO? Nobody understands this. Nobody has a right answer. Everyone's going around scratching their head going, what's so important about Ukraine? I understand there's a lot of civilians there, and this isn't me coming off as, okay, millions of people of Ukraine could die and, you know, whoopsie, who cares? That's not at all what I'm suggesting. But from the military standpoint, from the amount of resources we're giving Ukraine, not just to defend themselves, but to then attack Russia, what is going on? Nobody really has those answers. And if you do, it's misinformation. None of this makes any sense at all. And one good way to kind of gauge how bad the world is going is the price of gold. I mentioned this in a previous video, but as you can see, gold has just hit another all-time high very, very recently, like earlier today. And so when you look at the trend of gold, it just really seems like we're heading into a massive time right now in our history of fear. That's how gold goes up, when there's, you know, lots of fear going on. And then I find myself, just personally, this isn't sponsored at all, but I find myself looking at stuff like this, right? Atlas survival shelters, actual bunkers. Because in a video yesterday or the day prior, I did show that there was either in United States Costco, I don't think it's in Canadian Costco, they have the food, the barrels of food, the buckets of food that, you know, can last 25, 30 years. And I just thought that was really interesting. And now I'm seeing bunkers like this. Visit Atlas bomb shelters from $20,000 up to several $100,000. It's just crazy. And they say that it protects from tornadoes and storm shelters, luxury grand shelters, nuclear bunkers, all that stuff. And they're extremely popular, more so popular in certain parts of America, like Texas. I don't know if there's a company here in Canada that does that, but why am I even looking at nuclear bunkers? Like, that's how messed up this world is. Now, there's two potential pathways that I'm seeing, right? Are we experiencing a new Cold War where Russia has their hand on, well, they don't even need their hand on the nuclear button, because if they die or if Russia gets bombed, automatically it's going to trigger all of their nuclear warheads launching. So there's that. But are we in a nuclear war, or is this threat very real? And are we a threat of, a Cold War, or is this threat very real for the potential of seeing a nuclear war happening, or nuclear bomb, at least even one, happening in our lifetime? And the answer is uncertain. It seems to be leaning more towards, yes, this is very real, but I'm sure in the Cold War they were saying the exact same thing. And I just feel like our politicians, especially in America, that are running the world, right? And Canada, that's the Chihuahua for America. We're on their leash, right? I feel like our politicians, even Pierre Poilievre, is saying we should be spending more on Ukraine. We should be giving more to Ukraine. And Pierre, why? Do you not see Russia and BRICS as an actual threat? Like, why aren't we talking about peace? Why does it seem like left-leaning politicians, and I hate to lump Pierre into this, but why does it seem like left-leaning politicians are so pro-war when historically they've always been about peace? And now the conservatives, Republicans are pro-peace and against this war. Everything just seems so backwards. And I guess I just want to end this video by asking you, How do you feel about this? Do you think this is all just a bunch of malarkey? It's all just, you know, a Cold War, nothing's going to happen? Or do you think that there is a real risk, a real chance of something catastrophic happening above and beyond all of the innocent lives that have already been lost? Let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. And as always, this is the end of the video. So I'd like to encourage you guys, if you haven't yet already, to smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't yet already, and we will see you in the next one. Bye for now.